Okay, welcome back everyone to the Bitcoin SV Train channel. Today I'm talking to Michael Hudson, CEO of Bitstocks.com. They were a market advisory and management service, but now, Michael, you said that's you've shifted your focus a bit since you started back in 2014.
We set up back in April 2014, really predominantly as an investment house, set out to educate investors and manage their portfolios for them. And now, after being very much in observation mode in the space and broadening our own understanding and our own perspective, we are now doing what we feel is plugging the holes and the inefficiencies in the space and trying to build something that is truly holistic. And that is gravity, to be all-consuming, to be everything but nothing. And we really want to have a nice, sexy, something you don't even have to think about, Bitcoin experience, Bitcoin banking experience. That's what gravity is.
Something I hear a lot is that people say we're building a service where nobody notices the Bitcoin. No one actually has to see that they're using Bitcoin, makes it invisible. How necessary is that? Like, is it still necessary, or are people a little bit more aware of Bitcoin and that kind of thing nowadays?
Well, that really should be the ultimate goal and the ultimate objective, right? Once something becomes completely integrated, right?
Yeah.
Once something becomes truly global, it shouldn't be felt. It should be part of life. And what Bitcoin has is the ability to really drastically change our human experience in a very, very positive way. So if we truly believe in that, we should be designing our businesses around that vision. And it's ambitious. I think most businesses that are entering into the space should be insanely ambitious because there is no pre-carved path, right? So if you're going to go off and carve your own path, go for it.
I like the sound of insanely ambitious. That's something I'd like to hear more often. I may even write it on my wall. It's quite funny. I've seen some older interviews with you, and you're all suited up, looking very professional. The company itself looks very slick. Then a couple of weeks ago, I was watching you on Shem's channel, Captain Bitcoin, the BSV channel. It was totally not what I was expecting. You were going off in some very interesting directions there. Do you speak in a different way when you're talking to people who are Bitcoin savvy, or when you're speaking to the media, the mainstream media, or investors, that kind of thing? Or are you working on like a consistent message for everyone these days?
100% me, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And very unapologetically as well.
Yeah. By the way, I liked it. I thought it was
to go back to like the link between wearing suits and wearing what I'm wearing, say for instance now.
Yeah.
I like suits. Always have liked suits. But
they have their time and place.
I got to a point where I feel like in the city of London, and there's the financial world, the finance game, our messages are all wrong. The incentives are all wrong. How we even go about business is all wrong.
Right.
Because what we do is we walk into a professional setting and we put on our facade, and straight away we are starting off on an illusion, in my opinion. Right? And what I boiled it down to, as I became more comfortable in my own skin, and as intellect really became the be-all and end-all, the defining characteristic, the only defining characteristic, is that when you put enough work into honing and harnessing and broadening your intellectual capacity, your physical image is nowhere near as important anymore. And what I realized is that if I'm doing business, who do I want to do business with? Do I want to do business with Clark Kent or Superman? Who's really wearing the suit?
Actually, that's an interesting question. I wonder what it would be like to do business with Superman. I think I'd find it a little bit intimidating, to be honest.
I think everyone should just be comfortable in your own skin. If suits is your thing, great. If you're wearing it for any other reason because you're trying to win business, wrong message, especially in this day and age. I think the world's drastically changing. How people are making money is drastically changing. How we're doing business is drastically changing. People want to connect with a human being, and a suit and a tie, unless it's really you, isn't going to cover that or mask that.
I used to know a guy who worked for, I think it was Credit Suisse or something like that, and he wasn't really a suit wearing guy, but of course he had to wear one to work. And he was always told by his boss to wear the biggest watch he could find. And he said, I'm not a watch guy. I never wear a watch. I don't even wear a suit most of the time, but my boss orders me to wear a watch. And he makes me wear an expensive one. Because he says, when you walk into a meeting with the clients, if they see an expensive watch, they're going to think, okay, well, this guy's smart enough and wealthy enough to afford a nice watch. Therefore, I can trust him with my investments.
And that's the unfortunate illusion, really.
Yeah.
However, that doesn't really work for you when you're walking into your lawyer's office. Then you want to take that watch off and put it back in your pocket, I assure you.
That's true.
Otherwise, fees
That's an extremely good point, yeah. So, and another thing I really wanted to ask you during the BSV channel interview was your necklaces and pendants. What do they mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's a really good question. Because with me, everything means something at a much deeper level. So the gold one that I used to wear a lot more frequently, that's something called the Sense of Five. That is a Patrick Flanagan technology, and it is concavely curved. And you have a sequence of tetrahedrons interlaced into a spiral, which are actually, ironically, bake in the same mathematics that I'm saying is within Bitcoin. It's just universal mathematics. It's what the universe oscillates, vibrates on. And within the pendant that I've been wearing more recently, which ironically I'm not wearing today, it's actually downstairs being cleaned.
It was the triangular.
That one's more interesting. So that one is arc crystals, invented by a brilliant scientist called Nassim Haramein.
Right.
And he has based that crystal off the Planck scale, the geometry of the Planck scale. Point blank, what that crystal does is harnessing the same harmonic effect as the pyramids of Giza. So jewelry can have a very positive effect on the body's own auric field, because everything is frequency, vibration, and energy. So the same way that you will have, say, a orgone pyramid in your house to diffuse harmful radiation frequencies. If you say, for instance, you had dried fruit in a pyramid based off those same golden ratios. Okay.
Yeah.
Dried fruit typically outside of a pyramid will last maybe 30 days. You put it inside a pyramid, you can add quite a few zeros to that process just because of this energetic feeling and its energetic principle.
Is that true?
So I'm really into the geometry aspect of how things work and what that means from an energetic standpoint. And also it kind of looks like Tony Stark's power generators. I think that's pretty cool as well.
That's right, yes. Well, I mean, that's his ultimate sort of badass accessory, of course. I remember my grandfather used to have a pyramid in his backyard. I think I'm not sure if it ever did him any good, but he definitely tried it.
Awesome.
It was there. It was a long time ago. I just remember that now. But anyway, today we particularly wanted to talk to you today about data ownership, because it's such a big deal these days, and I think people are maybe they are, maybe they're not. Maybe they're starting to realize the ramifications of not owning their data, or having some third party that is not transparent, that's maybe not acting in their best interests, actually knows a lot about them, and or could find out a lot about them. So what's your current thinking on data ownership, and what are you working on now that's going to improve things, do you think?
Well, I was actually quite excited to have this conversation with you, because I really do think that this is the meat and potatoes of the whole subject matter when it comes to society, IoT, 5G, centralized data centers, the fact that we're all going to cloud computing now, what that means. Data is the currency of this planet, it's data. And the misconception also along with artificial intelligence, and there's so many misconceptions out there as to what AI is, what data is, and what the flows are. Having ownership of our data in this day and age and becoming a data-based economy is the be all and end all, because right now we don't have ownership. We are emitting data, but we do not have ownership. So everyone is looking for AI, right? Everyone's looking underneath their bed for artificial intelligence, or every time they switch on the TV, that Elon Musk or somebody's terrifying them about artificial intelligence, right? And there's a lot of misconception as to what artificial intelligence is.
Oh, there sure is.
Before I jump into that deeply, the first place that people need to understand and look as to where AI is they don't realize that our data systems today, Google, these are symbiotic relationships.
Yep.
Okay. So you have Google
between us and those services, you mean?
Between us and the system, right? So you have Google being a centralized server, the centralized service provider. And then imagine all strings beaming from Google. And all of those strings attached to pretty much every single human being on this planet that interacts with Google as a company. Okay?
Yeah.
And then you have, say, another centralized database like Facebook, same thing, strings beaming, right? Now, if you're shut down your Facebook account, you still got a string connected to you for Instagram, right?
That's right,
And a suite of companies. So there are all of these strings or IV drips going from us to Google or us to Facebook. Difference is that they are extracting, it's a one-way street, because they're extracting through that IV drip and taking our information, our data, centralizing it, selling it back to us. Then you have corporate interest that steps in and then pollutes the whole freaking pie of it, because those corporate interests are then going to make the demand and the need for data to be even deeper. So we have more value extracted from us. Now we're walking around like zombies with all of these IV drips to Google, to Facebook, to Snapchat, etc. Now, that is the only bad thing when you have a centralized system. When you have a centralized system that's providing an interface, the limiting factor to the interface with Google right now is how we interact with it. But as soon as we move away from using our thumbs to interact with Google, and we immerse ourselves into an environment of IoT on top of something like Google, then we lose our sovereignty. Because not only is Google monitoring everything on your device, if you've got cameras in your home, they've got those streams too.
Which is quite frightening.
So we become data slaves. And this is the point that I actually made a tweet about this yesterday, is that people do not understand that Bitcoin's ultimate objective is to become the most centralized system on the planet.
I saw that, yes.
The most centralized system on the planet. And what I mean by that is that you still have all the strings attached, right? So we want to have 5 billion plus people connected to Bitcoin by a string, right?
A single string,
So if you then visualize that, you've got density in the middle being the core Bitcoin network, right? And if you've got all of these dynamic flowing strings giving you density, giving you something that is geometrically proportional or whole, then you have expansion and contraction within these strings. When you expand, you've got the full width and breadth of knowledge, the collective hive mind, all of those strings, the consciousness connected to one of those strings, the 5 billion people, we are all interacting and putting our information, our data on this system. This system, therefore, is becoming more intellectually powerful. And we are opted in and out of that. So if you look at this in a real world environment, I'm at home, surfing around the web in my smart home, and I've had one too many bottles of water. So I go off and I need to go to the toilet, right? So I go to the toilet, I take a piss in the toilet, and I've got smart devices in my toilet. So that will then scan my urine. And if I wish to, I can then search it against the rest of the public database. But the rest of the public database is an opt-in service.
Yeah.
So if other people want to compare their data against the public hive data, well, how are these people incentivized to share that information? It could be obviously done pseudonymously, so it's not about ID, but you should be paid to be sharing that information if you are contributing to a whole. So you're going to have a system where sometimes people might not want to share everything, so it becomes a little bit contracted in terms of its intellectual capacity. But if we've got enough incentives where everyone's just freely flowing and sharing, you've got this system that is breathing. And between every single breath and every single expansion, contraction, is just getting smarter and smarter and smarter. The state of the system is continuously changing. If you didn't have a way to surf that, you've got a system that makes Jarvis very possible.
Jarvis?
Yeah.
What's Jarvis?
This is all about how we interact. So if we then have a way of having ownership over our data, the next challenge or bottleneck is how do we break through the interface barrier of moving beyond just mobile phones to really get the maximum benefit out of that new way of having ownership of data and being able to surf this new web.
Right. So that does sound wonderful. I mean, just having that kind of not a hive mind so much as just a access to all of the information, of humankind at all time, which we sort of have to a certain extent with the internet now. But
Absolutely.
I mean, why has it turned into such a dystopian vision now with companies like Google? Because I think originally, Google set out to do that kind of thing. They wanted to be the repository for all the world's data, they said.
Yeah.
And yet
you can't do it without accountability and traceability. Then
right, there's the key.
Yeah, then it becomes co-opted and corrupted. It becomes cancerous. It becomes serving of corporate interest. And then we have to be a lot more educated about how the world is even run, and then you can see how quickly corporate interests can seep into things. I mean, people assume there's 50 states in America. There's not. There's 100. Because you have the legal definition of a state, and then you have the actual state of itself. State of California, California state, two very different legal definitions. So this is why in America you can have a president, because the only way you can have a president is if it's a corporation. And as a corporation, you also need to have a board, Congress.
Yeah.
So people do not understand even basic way that society say constructed to understand. Then when you've got a centralized system and you have all of these convoluted corporate interests swimming around this centralized system, they're going to attack it and manipulate it to fulfill their own agenda. Look at 2016 with election rigging, right? You had Soros involved, you had Hillary Clinton involved, you had all of this crazy stuff going on because Google at that very core center was aiding this stuff. And now what we have today as a consequence from the action that kicked off in 2016 is you could be a truth speaker and naturally you're going to be a bit paranoid that these platforms are going to target you. But now I've even seen Joe Rogan paranoid. I'm seeing Unbox Therapy paranoid, MKHB paranoid about being deplatformed on YouTube.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's because these corporate interests have now come in so aggressively and people are now aware. They now think, fuck it, everyone knows we're up to it. So we just sort of go at it really aggressively.
Exactly.
And now there is a merger between the owners of mainstream media, big four banks, largest shareholders is Facebook and Google as well, right? So there is no separation between mainstream media and how the internet is being run today with social media.
That's true.
People just need to be aware of these things. And it doesn't mean that, that's it, stop Google right now, stop Facebook right now. No, be aware that there's a string connected to you that is extracting data from you. Facebook, Twitter, no matter how much we bitch and moan about them, the users, the density is in Twitter. The density is in YouTube right now. The density is in Facebook right now. So the most important thing is just be aware. And as we are building the new alternative, then you can start moving over. But for now, we need to find better ways to utilize Facebook, Google, and these services while having more ownership over us and our data. And that's possible by using influencers with Bitcoin right now, but then it's full-blown, fully immersed inside of Bitcoin. That's still a while off.
So those services are just the ones we know, and I think what could be more insidious is all of the services that are gathering data on us that we've never even heard of. Like the analytics companies that are tracking everything we do on the internet. I don't even know the names of some of these companies. At least I can theoretically delete my Facebook account and if I'm naive, I'll trust that they've actually deleted the data, but I don't think they do ever. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible at this stage to actually, extract yourself from that network. I mean, we're already kind of in the matrix, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's great that Bitcoin gives us a chance to build an alternative. I'm just wondering, like, how do we get there from here, from this really, I would even say, dire situation that we find ourselves in, to something
Well,
better.
if you want to build a global network, then your aim really is to achieve that, right? A global network. And that really should be to be all consuming. So Bitcoin's objective and Bitcoin's goal is to have every interaction on top of it. And if you have every interaction on top of it, and that is beyond what we're doing pretty much right now, because I'm talking about human to human, human to machine, and machine to machine interactions,
Right.
just all being documented on one globally utilized tape or ledger. That then means all strings are connected to one place. I'm even talking about the string going to your toaster connected to one place.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I say the largest number in the universe is one. Because let me give you a biological example of that.
Go on.
You, right now, John, are one being, as am I, and everyone else who walks around this planet. But within your one being is 100 trillion cells.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those cells has the image of the whole. And in each one of those 100 trillion cells, you have 100 trillion atoms. Each one of those atoms has the image of the whole.
This is sounding like holographic universe theory,
Holographic universe.
which I quite like, by the way.
So how can one be the largest number? Well, you represent one. You are one being. If you was in a single room by yourself and someone asks me how many people are in that room, I say one. But you are a combination of all of these things that have the image of not just you, by the way. One cell has an image of the whole universe in that one cell. And this is where we start understanding the power of that statement. The whole information of the universe, the whole entirety of the universe is contained in the smallest image of itself. Extracting information and energy is what scientists are trying to do. This is whole 0-point energy, unified field theory. It's what Einstein was getting at, spent the second half of his life trying to crack. This is the holy grail of understanding, really, the connection between us all. So if you then take that thinking back to Bitcoin, the ultimate objective of Bitcoin is to amount to one.
Mm-hmm.
We are the cells, 100 trillion of them, machine to machine, human to machine, and we are all connected into this machine, right? All of our thoughts, all of our interactions are all contained within this machine. So you've got all of these infinite possibilities of interaction. And even if we have a spike of innovation, right, that just means the system expands, okay? So it's got this much bigger, but all of the connections are still within the boundaries of my hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's still just you, one person, John, in that one room. I will still have to count Bitcoin as one. And that is the ultimate objective of Bitcoin. This is what this is all about, because this is what scaling is about. Because what's the limiting factors? How do you get there? Well, we need to work out how the hell we have a system that can contain everything all within the same time. And this is why you don't limit the freaking mempool. You don't limit the block size. You don't do that. Because how can you understand what breath this system wants to take? What about if I'm just walking around London, like my lungs are cool, I'm just like breathing fine, okay? And if I want to sprint up a mountain, well, now I'm taking freaking breaths, right? So how can you decide when I want to walk and when I want to sprint? And this is what developers are doing.
Yeah.
And this is the big issue. So scaling, this is why SV's got it right. Corporate structuring, who see this and understand this is why SV's got it right. And There is no other competition. There is no other way of doing this. There really isn't. You have to scale because you have to be all consuming. You have to be everything yet nothing. And this is what I announced at ConGeek London when I said the inspiration for Gravity is to become everything yet nothing. It's to be all containing, and it's so air is everything yet nothing, right? You only know
Yeah.
when it's not there. When it's there, cool, but you only know when it's not there.
All right, then I think there's a lot to ponder there, and there's many different rabbit holes we could go down. I'm starting to, after all that, I'm starting to wonder if we should have called it something other than Bitcoin, because Bitcoin just sounds like, literally, it sounds like digital money. And a lot of people think of it that way, and yet Bitcoin SV is definitely looking at something much larger than that. It's
It's
with
memory. It's
yeah.
memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's memory of everything. That's it. I mean, if you look at yourself and us, existence, like you are John because the memory that you hold of your life, which makes you you. Like
That's
that's
true.
what contains the whole. It's your memory. And that's what Bitcoin is. And people look at that and think, oh, like, is that all it is? It's just memory. I was like, dude, you don't understand memory. Like, memory is all consuming. It's the recording of everything. Like, time itself is the movement of matter through space. And that movement is, and the recording of that movement is what time is. And then if there's no movement, there is no time. So it's memory is a very, very, very incredible ambition for Bitcoin.
It absolutely isn't. I kind of wish my own memory was as immutable as the Bitcoin ledger. Although some people say that we never truly forget anything, we just lose the ability to retrieve it and
That's true.
recollect
That's
it.
very true.
And with the
Very
right
true.
prompting, sometimes it's even just a smell or a color or a piece of music or something like that can just unlock this whole like cache of memories that you never even realized you had.
Absolutely. Even like phobias, some people have no idea why they're terrified of swimming.
Yeah.
And then there will be a memory within your DNA that can unlock the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Well, I find all these topics quite fascinating, but and I think a lot of people still struggle, including me. We struggle to make the connect between like where the philosophy and where the theory stops and where our real life and real experience begins. Like a lot of people will turn this off, they'll walk out the door, but they won't really be thinking about their place in the universe, or how their data is being used in sort of infinite ways to sell products, to develop healthcare systems, to allocate resources, or something more nefarious, even to control. And I think it's kind of dangerous in a way. I mean, should people think more holistically when they're out and about? I mean, if I'm running to catch the train, am I thinking?
Um, I try not to be very judgmental on this
Yeah,
because I'm not a
I
product
don't mind if you
of
are.
a couple of nights of study.
Hmm.
I've been very aggressive on this for 50% of my life. I'm 32 now, and literally 50% of my life I've been on these subject matters.
Yeah.
And it's taken me that amount of time to get to a place of understanding, like to be able to sit at the top of a mountain and look down and actually be able to see the connections,
Hmm.
see the patterns, see how society really is being orchestrated. And the reason why it's important that people start to have a look is because if you can't see it, there's a high probability it's you that's feeding the beast, and
Hmm.
it's you that is blinded, and it is you that has all of these IV drips into you, extracting value from you, and you have no idea.
I,
And that's where it becomes dangerous. And that's just knowledge. That's just life. I mean, that's just someone who has put in the effort, then has an advantage and has an edge.
hmm.
But what I would like to start seeing, and this is what I try to do with my efforts and my teachings, is that people who do obtain a state of knowing and understanding shares that. And because I think beyond everything, to me, that is my core motivation. It's the only thing that really truly actually motivates me. Money is about having the resources in order to execute my plan. The reason why I need a lot of it, and we need a lot of it, is because the ambition and the scale of the plan requires it. And more of that is going to be known as the months push on in relation to Bitstocks and Gravity and what we're really truly doing from a humanitarian standpoint.
Right.
But learning to teach and teaching to learn is definitely the mantra that rules my life. And that hopefully, if more people take a similar approach, then there won't be as many people blindly feeding the beast.
I see. Yeah, and this is just taking me back to something I was thinking about before. Is how does Bitcoin actually increase our ownership over our own strings, our own data? Like I think it still has the potential to become, what Google is. It starts off quite innocuous. People trust it. They feed a lot of energy into it, and before they realize, some force that shouldn't have ever been trusted is in control of the whole thing. Can that happen with Bitcoin, or is Bitcoin immune to that?
It can happen, but it would have to be so orchestrated, and the only way it can actually be maintained if it was benevolent. And this is where it gets to the mining system and the economic incentives. Mining process is probably one of the most genius aspects of Bitcoin, not from the nerdy crypto side of it, but if you just look at the human behavioral guarantees that it enforces.
It's an aspect I find quite fascinating.
What they enforce is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. It doesn't matter what your religious beliefs are, your political beliefs are, your racial beliefs are. Doesn't matter if you rest your head in Afghanistan or America.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to set fire to their own wallet. No one.
Yeah.
And that commonality of capital, money, that transcends race, age, religion, creed, all these things that are used to divide us. The one thing that unites us due to a core necessity is money. So the Bitcoin system takes human beings' desire to profiteer, ultimately greed, commoditizes it, and converts it into a security model. That's genius. That's freaking genius. So that is our greatest protection mechanism to having a system that sustainably negative energy can beam out the top of that pyramid. And this is what I mean by you can assess the polarity. What we can't do is say that because we have Bitcoin on the planet, that now when we throw 1,000 people into one room, everyone's benevolent. It's ridiculous. It's not going to happen.
Of course not.
You throw 1,000 people in a room, you got some good, you got some bad. It's
yeah.
You got the yin.
I often wonder what the ratio is. Depends on the day, really.
Yeah. Ratios, hopefully, should improve because you are creating a societal environment which is more economically incentivized with the core utilization for what money is. The ability to price skill and labor, ultimately someone's time. Mm-hmm. So allow that to be as pure as it can be. If we allow the pricing of labor and skill to be pure, you have a world that can trade more openly and freely. And that is how Africa becomes a powerhouse. That is how these nations and these underprivileged places around the world become a powerhouse. And Bitcoin can really enable this, not just by Bitcoin being the universal reference of money and skill. That'd be great, but I'll be honest with you, and I'm saying this as a guy who's literally building a bank on top of Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. I think that's still a while off. I think we're going to go through a few different iterations before we can consider Bitcoin to be the all and end all from a monetary standpoint. But from utilizing it as a memory standpoint, this is where it's ultimately going to end up going. And this is how we smooth out the volatility. Because this becomes air. And when something becomes air, right, it's not about, how much Bitcoin does it cost in order for me to buy a loaf of bread, right? It's at that point, it's beyond that because it's air. And we're still a way off. We're still a way off, but we're very, very aggressively with our eyes very much open, marching in that direction, and we're the only chain that's marching in that direction.
That's true. It's definitely the only one that has that kind of ambition, anyway.
Yeah,
which, going back to the start of this interview, is, quite an important thing. Do you see anyone else working in Bitcoin? And yes, of course, when we say Bitcoin, we mean Bitcoin SV, because it is the only one that can exponentially scale in that way that we need to build the structures we're talking about. Do you see anyone else working in this space that you think, that guy's got it, or that team is right on the money there, so to speak?
There's a lot in SV. Mm-hmm. There's a lot. I mean, for instance, Alex Hancash, I've called him up before. I always have interesting chats with him. He really gets it. Rafa as well, his business partner. Obviously, like the obvious ones like Craig, etc. Mm-hmm. Which doesn't even worthwhile noticing. He pioneered the whole space. Obviously, he gets it. Ryan, awesome as well. Even like Joel, had a chat with Joel. He really impressed me with his way he sees the mempool. Mm-hmm. I actually thought I was one of the only very few people who saw the mempool that way. And seeing, and it's the thing I love about SV. I'm getting more clarity and more high quality conversations in the last, say, year than I've had in the last 5 years, because we've all centralized into this SV community, and the people who can actually see what is going on, the sanity is fortunately within the SV community, and all the BS. There's not much talent outside of SV, if I'm being completely honest with you. Not much talent outside of SV. Well,
yeah, I guess I would have to agree with you there. I mean, that's one of the problems I had with the whole Bitcoin and crypto scene. Before all this forking happened, it had just, the whole conversation had just degenerated into gossip and price talk, and I didn't find any philosophy. I didn't see anyone looking at the reason for doing all of this anymore. Everyone was just speculating, and it was getting really boring. And it was only, Bitcoin Cash for a while, I guess, but I think the period where Bitcoin Cash existed without SV, I think, will get smaller and smaller as time goes on. I just found that all the people who wanted to have interesting discussions, the people who actually wanted to talk about all of that old stuff that we talked about back in 2012 and before then, why does this exist? What are we doing here? What exactly are we building? Those people all went to Bitcoin SV, or at least most of the ones I knew.
In relation to the rest of the space, at the highest level, they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. So if I go back to the analogy I was using about Bitcoin being all-containing, the ultimate objective of Bitcoin is to be one, right? And going back to the biological connection with us, 100 trillion cells, 100 trillion atoms, etc., etc. And we represent one. Well, go back to what's happened in this space. And the people at the very top knew the ultimate objective of Bitcoin is to achieve one. They knew it. So this is why they implemented SegWit, they implemented Lightning, they fueled altcoins and fueled us recreating all of these different systems with no symbiotic relationships.
Yeah.
So you being that one guy in the room, and I say, someone asks me, how many people are in that room? And I say, it's only John, so there's one. Well, now you're sharing that space. You're the only person, so you don't want, now you've created thousands of different Johns in this room. Right?
Horrible
and
thought.
All of these thousands of different Johns in this room are trying to create a world where they think that they can just connect to all the other Johns inside this room and somehow form one organism. But you're not one organism. You're multiple freaking organisms.
Mm-hmm.
You are not the contained whole acting as one. You've now got John, you've got Kathy, you've got Mark, you've got Steve, you've got Brandon, you've got all of these other people in that room. None of them are your DNA. None of them are connected to you. None of them are a fractalization, ultimately, of you. Ironically, if there are going to be any kind of fractal references, it's the fact that they're all built off Bitcoin's code base. That's the closest thing. But you're not the same. And the reason why you're not the same is because the only thing that changes genetic structures is the environment. And there's so many scientific studies that's been done on this, right? So this is why you'll share, say, 60 plus, I think it's 55% of your genes with a banana. It's all about environment.
Yeah.
So these other coins have taken the code base from Bitcoin, thinking that they're going to create the same organism, but your environment's cancerous. Your environment's malnourished. Your environment's completely different. Not only are you not going to get to 55% of Bitcoin being a freaking banana, right? You're going to be way off that. You're going to be a rotten banana. and this is what people don't understand and get. And this is why I don't spend any of my time arguing with people. And especially you won't pick up any form of like content, videos, tweets, Instagram stuff. I'm so content and whole. I just don't see the point in arguing. If anything, I find the space quite funny that there is so much infighting and people burning energy, while there's other people who are very serious about this, locked down with their vision, and they're building it in silence. And these are going to be the tortoises that completely leapfrog the hares.
Yeah, absolutely. Do many people even try to argue with you?
I think argument's a strong word. I always welcome discourse, like always, and I'm always willing to do a 180 on my stance. Just be respectful, and please, if you are going to challenge me, I really want you to educate me. So if you don't offer me something new and something that educates me, that's why I may be triggered, is because you've made a very strong stance and you've actually tried to debunk what I'm saying, not based on to be intellectually enlightened. You're just skeptical for skeptical's sake, and you want to maintain your narrow walls. So if people take that approach, I'd blow open completely, utterly, dynamite, blow open. But people who are saying respectfully challenging things, freaking hell, absolutely. It's how we learn, and hopefully that person can educate me.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic that one consequence of this, interconnected world that we live in is that people often don't even want to engage you anymore when they argue with you, or if they disagree with you, they'll just block you, or they'll troll or insult or something like that. I find that the quality of discourse has sort of degenerated on one side as it's improved on the other.
A large part of that is because too many people are too concerned trying to impress people that they don't even know.
Yeah. With big watches, fancy cars.
As well. And you have to look at yourself if this is what you're doing. And not many people are willing to self-reflect. So why do I need the approval of others? Why do I need the approval of the crowd? Right?
Yeah.
You don't take the crowd to your coffin with you. Like the crowd isn't in your head.
that may be your plan.
Yeah.
No, I'm only joking.
So more people are a lot more connected with themselves. Again, this goes back to unity.
Yeah.
This goes back to whole. This goes back to identifying that there is a being within this shell and not a shell speaking. And that's the difference. If people run around identify with themselves as the shell and not understanding what animates the shell, then you're going to get spun off by lots of other shells in society if you don't know who you are.
So with all that in mind, the structures we have like Facebook, Google, Instagram, dare I say LinkedIn, are they really that bad? Maybe they are a force for good after all, just hypothetically.
I think that whether they're good or bad, I think it's clear that they've been utilized for bad, and for the most part, they're bad because of how the corporate interest has seeped in and has weaponized them. But again, I say, we have to be realistic about this. And as much as anyone could go out and say how bad Google is, how bad Twitter is, how bad Facebook is, cool, I agree. I really do. Especially YouTube and Instagram, especially the stuff that I talk about, it's an issue here. So I agree, these things are bad, but you have to appreciate the density that these platforms have. Yeah. And if you want to pull people out of the shadows and into the light, well, you got to jump into the shadows. So it's our responsibility to work out how to continuously pluck people out from Google, out from Facebook, out from these big organizations, and say, look, use them, but if you are going to use them, wear protection.
Sound advice.
It's as simple as that. We're going into these platforms and no one is protected. I'll let people's own minds roam as to what I mean with that. And that's the big issue. You're going to catch something.
Exactly, which is a scary thought. And, I think for a lot of people, it may even be too late. I mean, a lot of people have really just given up everything already. I'm a little bit scared what I've already given to Facebook. Again, even if I delete my account tomorrow, that's all still there. I mean, it's still going to be there after I die. I've been hearing people for about 20 years now talking about your data vapor trail that you leave after you die, and that data lives long past your physical being, and it could even be around a million years from now. I mean, that's going to happen with Bitcoin too, I guess.
And that's where it starts getting really, really interesting.
Yeah, I
If
don't
you
say
think
that
about
it's a bad thing.
records, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like our most ancient texts, our most ancient books, say for instance the Tibetans, they update they're quite scientific with their core teachings, and they update them based on new information. And this is something that's happened for hundreds of thousands of years. And if you have a culture that does things like that, those edits are very safeguarded, very safeguarded. But then you have to think about, okay, if you want to allow children and a new generation to learn from these edits, and I'm talking on the assumption that none of these were edited in a malevolent way, and I'm not going to get deep into it in that sense. Let's just say that these are edits because there's been new scientific breakthroughs that they have built upgrades their views on their understanding, their relationship to the universe, and they upgrade their teachings as a result of that, right? You want to keep records of that. There's so much of our knowledge on this planet that we have lost just due to aging process, misplacing things, erosion, things being lost. We have the ability to ensure that never happens again on the planet Earth. Like you can go interstellar, come back 1,000 years from now, and everything should be recorded on a blockchain. And if you've got with Google combined with say Alexa and Jarvis, that you can now talk to Bitcoin, it'll be a lot easier to use.
The thought of the things I said in my house when Alexa was listening a million years from now is kind of hilarious and a little bit scary. I mean, how is Bitcoin going to make this different? I mean, maybe I should ask that question in the context of what you're building. So you're building Gravity. How is, and you're building a Bitcoin bank. Is that the same as Gravity, or is it something separate?
Yeah. So Gravity is going to go through a variety of different iterations. Gravity is the full pinnacle of where we're going with Gravity. Ultimately, is eventually to give Bitcoin a voice. I'm not going to go into much detail about that, as at least a couple of years away, a few years away.
Yeah.
But we're going through different iterations with what it is that we're doing. I've got a very big vision as to how I see humanity changing as a result of not just Bitcoin, it's a variety of different technologies. And what Gravity is doing is being an arc, being a bridge between a combination of different technologies and the way that we see human beings experiencing these technologies changing. So right now, the most important thing is based on a desktop and mobile experience. Let's make this really slick, really sexy. Let's let people get in and out of Bitcoin SB as easily as possible and as cheaply as possible. Let's give them a safe place to store their assets. Let's give them flexibility. So like next year, we'll be having some of our current account services roll out. So you'll be able to make payments really easily. You'll be able to split bills really easily. You'll be able to use a debit card really easily. You'll be able to take out a loan against your holdings really easily. And on the back end side of things, as to how we're going to allow people to integrate into us, we're building more of a software layer on top of Bitcoin, then to allow API plugins so people can benefit from our trading engine and our liquidity engine. So if you want to build an application and you want Gravity to be a backend, like this is the way it is that we're thinking. So to start off with, it's just getting the basics out of the way, because I saw a couple of years ago that the way that this space is going to start changing is some of the players aren't going to be there in a few years. This is really going to open up because they ran off the mark as blistering hares, and now I can see them crashing into their trees because they ran for the money. and they money grabbed, and they had no vision as to where this space was truly going and how it's going to affect humanity. They're only interested in protecting their own pockets, right?
Yeah.
When you build a business with a view that you believe to be accurate as to where this space is going and where Bitcoin is going, it's you have to build it in steps and stages, because I have my ultimate vision as to what it is that I see. And that is a challenge and a task on my team in itself, because my mind thinks in 5-year blocks. So I always strategize and I plan out the next 5 years of my life, and I keep doing that on a yearly basis. So I always map things out. I run continuous simulations as to how I think things will go, and what I think we need and what we should be doing as a company in order to ensure that we're there for when we need it. And so Gravity has been designed with that in mind. I'm planning on making quite a large announcement Q1 next year about partnerships and a bigger vision to Gravity. But one thing I will say on your channel, my CoinGeek London talk is pretty much all in there. Right. I'm really, really cryptic with my symbolism. But the fact that Da Vinci, the Vitruvian Man, was inside a torus, because that's what it was. He was inside a torus. You had expansion and contraction, and that was not 2 ring systems. It was said as 2 ring systems, but really and truly, it is what I see: Bitcoin expanding and then contracting. Then you have the internet, and you have Bitcoin, system of information, system of capital, combined together informs the infinity symbol, the magic 8, and what appeared in the middle of the infinity symbol was gravity, and then gravity was forming the infinity symbol. This is the real vision to what it is that I have and how we're going to integrate with Bitcoin, what things are ultimately going. But what I can't be too descriptive about is the kind of R&D that we're going to do around interfaces. Right. I think that's the next big thing. Once we go into we're already very aggressively moving into a place where localization of computation isn't going to be a thing anymore, right? You're going to have the processing of this device done at a data center, not locally. A perfect example of that is Stadia, Google Stadia.
Right.
So that is breaking through different ways of gaming. You can have thousands of people online experiencing one game at the same time, right? And you could do that, and you could play it off your iPad screen because the computation is not local. So that means, how does that change devices like this if the computation is not local? I don't have the same power draws and requirements. These could be thinner. These could be lighter. These could be more integrated. These could even be implanted. Yeah. Right. In a centralized world of Google, implantations, I'm super against.
All kinds.
We then have ways of doing things where we have control and ownership over our data. Then it changes everything. So for me, I think basically Bitcoin with a voice is what I abbreviate it down to.
Bitcoin with a voice. Okay, yet another good slogan there. I'm just wondering, like, I assume, as a service and as an online service, like you will gather some data from your own users, about what they do, that kind of thing. Do you have a different philosophy there? Are you like collecting that for market research purposes, or you're just trying to figure out what people want? Like, why do you? I mean, assuming that you do get the data, like, what do you use that for?
So our first take is UI UX. Let's make it sexy. Let's make this really, really easy. So we focus on user interface, user experience first, while we're maintaining having all of our data conversations. And this is really quite aggressively with our law firm as well, because stage 2 is full blockchain integration. So I've got my compliance team. Everything that we've done and we've designed for Gravity has been designed in a way to architect every component to what we're doing. So architect the switch functionality switching between one asset to the other, architect how it works on the back end, our compliance process, architect how it works on the back end. When someone signs up or uploads information, architect how it works on the back end. So we can see all the data points as to what it is that we're collecting. We are very, very aggressively and have been very aggressively, nerdily become very au fait with GDPR and MLD5 as well. And what we want to do isn't just integrate with the blockchain. And I don't want to be holding data, but I need it to be legally and lawfully compliant.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. That's where we've got like the tech side of it pretty much like covered, and it's the legal aspect. Because then it's what I really would love is I'm deliberately staying in the UK with Bitstocks because it is an environment where we can do some experiments as to how to run a company here as a jurisdiction. Yeah. So what I would love to see is being able to open up a stream, say, with the tax office and build solutions where we can actually automatically set aside our tax liabilities and pay them quicker and easier. I want to use Gravity as an example of how to do things properly, transparently, and also maintain user privacy as an example, because unless we start doing this and we start pushing the boundary and we start being really ambitious with our models and like using our own new models as the testing bed, I believe we're going to get this right.
Yeah.
And we do get it right. When we do get it right, it will prove that there really isn't going to be another model. You have to do integration. So giving people ownership over data, but also maintaining all of our own legal and regulatory requirements, finding that sweet spot, is where it's at. And we're very focused on that, very, very focused on that. Again, that's another great thing with SV, because there's quite a few people working on the same thing. And the great thing about this space is because we all seem to be united towards our destination. The interactions are awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll get something done a lot sooner.
I mean, I do want to say for the record, I don't see data retention and data gathering as an inherently bad or good thing. It's just a thing, and I think it's an inevitable thing. It's just a matter of how it's done.
Should aim to hold the minimum, while fulfilling their maximum obligations. And I think that's a good standard practice, and it needs to be a practice where it can be easily validated and verified as well. And that's why I really like kind of talking about Bitcoin more in a memory sense, because if you consider AWS and you kind of take them out of the equation, you put Bitcoin there, doing these things will be easier.
I definitely don't want to spend an hour talking about AWS. All right, then. Thanks a lot, Michael. You do so many interviews. I'm not really sure if it's necessary to ask people where to find you on Twitter, because I think you're more of a speaking guy. But if you had to direct someone somewhere, where would you say? Maybe the CoinGeek London speech you did last year?
No, so definitely I think people should check out the CoinGeek London talk, and just factor in that I was being very, very, very cryptic with what it was that I was saying. I actually unveiled most of Bitstocks' plan with Gravity, and also how I see Bitcoin and the mathematics that are hidden within Bitcoin was all inside that. Craig's comment of it being biologically inspired, which is why Vitruvian Man was inside Bitcoin. It was very loaded with symbolism. Definitely something cool to check out and understand it from that standpoint. And what we are doing here at Bitstocks, and the most important component here at Bitstocks is what we're building with Gravity, is actually our media department.
Oh, yeah.
So we have an in-house media department here. We're really ramping up our studio. And one aspect of our studio is going to be the intellectual content that we're putting out. I haven't been featuring on Bitstocks' own YouTube channel much at all recently. I've been just doing interviews instead while they get things ready. We do crypto time regularly with James and Antonio. That's a consistent thing.
It's quite a good show.
But an insane amount of planned content is proposed for our media division, and the quality of content that we're going to put out there, and you're going to really see our DNA. Because one thing that I love about Bitstocks and everyone here, and the kind of vibe we get and how people interact with us and connect with us, it is all based around passion, and it's based around intellect, it's based around passion, it's based around sovereignty. So a playful side of that would be, we have a spin-off here called Cars and Crypto. Right? So there's a few guys in the office, big petrol heads. Like, I'm a big, huge petrol head. There's other few guys in the office got like sports cars, supercars and stuff. And we just had a bit of fun just on YouTube and stuff. And we put together Carbon Crypto. But now what we're doing is we have been paying a lot of attention as to how we're going to market our service. And we want to go for the mainstream. I have no interest in penetrating the crypto market. It's freaking polluted. Those who seek us
outside
out
of
in the core crypto space will seek us out and will be aware of us. But I'm not interested in jumping into battle and trying to tell everyone that you guys got it wrong and this is the right way of doing it. I let them go through their own process. So going for mainstream is what this space needs. It really is what this space needs. And I don't think we have a good representation, even within the SB community, of appealing to mainstream. And I think this is a crypto issue. It really is a crypto issue. We're too caught up in arguing and fighting to appeal to a mainstream audience. So we've got a lot of quirky ways to integrate with that. Esports is a huge agenda here for us. So you're going to see us getting very integrated into esports. I've actually got a few boxes in my office right now. I might be able to grab one of them. So this is actually just the floor mat to my play seat race holder. But I've actually we've ordered a simulator in the office. So a Formula One simulator.
Oh, wow.
In the office. And it's just the esports space has got crazy. You've got kids now earning $500,000 this year for the winner of the F1 esports. You've got millions of views. You've got tournaments that are huge now, filling out stadiums. And these are young individuals, millennials. So you can have anywhere from 16 to mid 30s who are gaming as a profession.
Yep.
Right? These people.
I wish I'd known about that back in the 80s, man. I could have.
Yeah, I know, right? They're gaming as a profession. And they're very aligned with technology, interfaces, experiencing new interfaces. And really, if there's a community that's going to be prime and most receptive to a Ready Player One-esque world, this esports community.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just check out Bitstocks Media.
Bitstocks
my
Media.
Instagram, BTC Hudson. Twitter, BTC Hudson. Any social media stream and even Twitch, etc. When we start doing some streams, and if anyone wants to race me, it will be BTC Hudson.
Cool. I
you
might get in on that. Nice. All right. Well, we ended with esports there, and I totally forgot what I was going to say to go out. But anyway, I want everyone to leave this interview. Shut down the browser window you're watching now and just spend about 30 seconds in total silence with your eyes closed and think about your place in the implicate order of the universe and Bitcoin's place in the order of the universe. And just think about how that may affect your actions and your use of data from now on. Michael, do you have any last minute thoughts?
That's beautifully said.
Alrighty.
Yeah. As just guys, check us out on our Bitstocks Media YouTube channel. So that's Bitstocks TV. There's going to be some awesome content coming out. Follow me on social media. John, this has been awesome. Really appreciate it. Really enjoyed this.
Thanks a lot, Michael.
As always, peace, love, and light. All the best.
Over and out. See you later.
Take care, brother.